There I was, all alone. I lost the last bits of compassion that I had buried deep down inside my soul. I couldn't be happier. I suppose the reason why I was so happy was because I had begun to see emotions as weakness. I was evolved beyond emotions. I've loved, but all love turned to hate. I saw other souls as lesser. They were too weak to see all the shame that they brought upon themselves. They were worthless and meant to be hunted. The flame of the surrounding wasteland seemed to grow in intensity. The walls of flame grew higher, consuming the hollow ruins of the nearby city. It was truly the most beautiful sight I had ever seen. The sky was glowing with a wavering deep orange. The deep and majestic beauty of fire and ash washed over me like a wave. I smiled at the sight of this hellish landscape. I had always wanted to explore an abandoned city, so with a smile on my face, I walked down the desolate highway and into the forest of city high-rises. On my way to the city, there were hundreds of scorched cars crashed on the highway. The paint had been burnt off the cars, leaving a color like that of rusted copper. Inside the cars were the drivers. Some of the people were completely disintegrated, but others remained intact, covered in charred and blistered flesh. As I neared the dark and forsaken city, the hot winds of death filled my lungs, bringing with them an invigorating sensation which I craved. The city became larger and larger as I approached. Once I was on the lonely city streets, debris falling from the building above became visible through the smoke. Debris fell all around me, and accompanied with them were the faint and tired screams of men and women. As I passed piles of rubble, I could hear labored cries and pleas for help that I knew would never arrive. I ignored their cries and extended my blade-like arm. Smiling, I began to dig around through the scorched rubble and cement blocks in order to find survivors. The cries grew louder as I grew closer. Soon I was right on top of a voice screaming with tired and sore vocals. Please, someone help." I smiled and shoved my hand through the cement prison the man was trapped in and grabbed his hand. With a relieved and tortured voice, the man cried, "Thank God! I thought I was going to die." "Who said you're not going to die?" Then I shoved my claws into his stomach. The man gasped from sheer pain. Amused, I twisted my hand around and tore a hole through his beaten and battered body. The man dropped to the ground and let out a final soft cry. "Why?" I only smiled and continued down the street. The streets were lonely and bright from the glow of the intense flame. The sky was dark from billows of smoke and ash. There was a feeling of extreme pleasure that I felt when I saw the empty shell of this city. The thought that this whole city was leveled just in an attempt to kill me was humbling. The amount of hate directed towards me was incredible. I loved the hate and the pain. The scorched sidewalk crumbled under my feet as I walked down the streets. The screams of the survivors began to sound louder to me. I loved the thought of murder and pain. I loved the thought of a man trapped under rubble and starving to death. Their loss was my gain. Everywhere I went, people died or had their lives thrown into total disarray. I had nothing left to live for but pain, and I was going to cause it. While proceeding down the sidewalk, a large pile of rubble fell from a nearby building. Accompanied with it were the corpses of a man and a woman. The man appeared to be at least 30 years old, while the woman seemed no older than 17. Screams followed the crashing sound of the rubble. I looked up to the building, and standing on the ledge of the tower was a group of survivors. The group was terrified and screaming at the loss of their friends. They looked down at me and began to cry. I don't know if they were crying over the lives of their friends, or the fact that I was about to end theirs. I began to scale the walls of the battered high-rise. The people above panicked and threw things at me. Boulders and debris flew past my face as I climbed higher and higher to the petrified group, but I was too fast to be hit. As I neared closer to the top, I could see the look of terror on their faces. The look of panic in their eyes was delicious. I climbed the wall in a spider-like fashion, stabbing my claws into the walls for traction until I was finally at the top. Once atop the roof of the building, the group panicked and scattered. They knew what I was about to do to them. They knew there was no escaping death. The women and children of the group ran down off of the roof through a stairwell, but the men and a few of the women stayed. They sacrificed themselves just to buy their group a little more time. They knew their lives were worthless, but I guess they tried to give themselves meaning in death. The few remaining men and women stood stout and tall in front of me. I almost considered sparing such noble creatures, but that thought was overwhelmed by the primal urge to kill. I smiled with a face full of fangs and got down low, scraping my claws against the gravel that lay atop the roof. All the while the blinding glow of the fire grew behind me. I released an ear-shattering demonic battle cry, spewing a thick blood-like substance from my mouth. The men and women began to tremble in my presence. Silently chuckling, I imagined their bodies strung out and decaying. The thought pushed me to the extreme. I lunged forward, tackling one of the men to the ground. I then raised my claw with superhuman speed, and with the precision of a surgeon, I skinned him alive. The man screamed in intense pain as I peeled back his bruised and bloody skin. I then raised my bladed arm and swung it through the skinless man. Blood spewed across the roof and soaked the remaining group. I looked across to see the remaining few men and women collapse to their knees and sobbing uncontrollably. I smiled and said with a soothing voice, "Take your death with pride, and maybe I'll let the rest of your group live, for today." Just then, one of the men stepped forward and said hesitantly with a deep sense of dread in his voice, "Look at what we have come to. You and me are alike. We were all human at some point. If you kill us, God wins. He wants to see us turn on each other. He loves it when the innocent turn evil. Don't let him win again." "You're wrong. We are not alike. I am no longer a man. I am a weapon, and I need to kill." The man looked down to his feet with a look of pure despair. "Kill me. I was meant to die." I let out a deformed smile and lunged onto the man, pinning him to the ground. With a calm look in his face, the man looked into my eyes and fell unconscious. My eyes were truly a pit of soul-sucking dread. I then drug his body to the side of the building and tossed him over. I turned around, expecting to see the other men and women to be awaiting their deaths. However, I was shocked to see them gone. They had all left and ran into hiding. I jumped down off of the building and crushed the pavement below. This is where I am now. I am a hunter in heaven. I am happy to be here in this city. I love the hate and pain I cause. I don't think I would give it up for the world. I guess the old saying is right. Another man's hell is another man's heaven. But I never thought that hell would be my heaven. I hunt men every day. Sometimes I just give them a scare, but most of the time I just kill them. I suppose I will have to move on to a new city once I am done with this one. Besides, there isn't enough hate here to last me forever. I love the thought of murder now more than ever. It truly does make me happy. I finally found my place in life. I am living the dream. Maybe someday you'll be part of it.